She married a rich stranger to save her restaurant, then found a board linking him to multiple murders. The first time Mara Bennett saw Adrian Vale, he was sitting alone at table 7 with blood on his cuff and asking whether she believed marriage could be treated like a business expense. It was 11:43 on a rainy Thursday night, and Evelyn's table had officially closed 40 minutes earlier. The chairs were upside down on the tables, the kitchen burners were cooling, and the last 2 employees had already gone home. Mara should have told the stranger to leave. Instead, she stared at the dark red stain near the wrist of his tailored white shirt. "Are you hurt?" "No." His voice was quiet, controlled, and strangely tired. "Then whose blood is that?" The man glanced at his cuff as though he had forgotten it was there. "A man fell outside my hotel. And you helped him?" "I held pressure on the wound until the ambulance arrived." That answer did not fit the rest of him. He wore a black overcoat that probably cost more than Mara's monthly rent. His hair was dark, his face sharply handsome, and his expression carried the distant coldness of someone who had spent years making sure nobody could reach him. Yet he had stopped in the rain for an injured stranger. Mara lowered the mop in her hand. "The kitchen is closed." "I know. Then why are you here?" He looked toward the framed photograph hanging behind the counter. In it, Mara was 12 years old, standing beside her mother in the original restaurant kitchen. Both of them had flour on their faces. "Your sign says no one leaves hungry." Mara followed his gaze. Her mother had painted those words by hand 24 years earlier. No one leaves hungry. It had been Evelyn Bennett's rule, even when customers could not pay, especially when they could not pay. Mara sighed, returned to the kitchen, and warmed the last bowl of roasted tomato soup. She added a grilled cheese sandwich, placed the plate before him, and tried not to notice the way his shoulders loosened when the smell reached him. He ate slowly, not like a rich man evaluating a meal, but like someone remembering one. When he finished, he placed a $100 bill beneath the plate. Mara pushed it back. The soup was going to be thrown away. The ingredients were not free. Neither was the ambulance you probably called. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Then, for the first time, he smiled. It was not a charming smile. It was small, uncertain, and so unfamiliar on him that Mara suspected he rarely used it. "What is your name?" he asked. "Mara." "Mara what?" "Bennett." The smile disappeared. He looked again at the photograph behind her. Daniel Bennett's daughter? Mara's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "My father died when I was 13. "I know." The answer came too quickly. Before she could question him, the stranger stood, buttoned his coat, and left the restaurant without giving his own name. The next morning, Mara learned that Evelyn's table had 30 days left. Her landlord arrived before the lunch rush, carrying a legal notice and an expression that pretended to be sympathetic. The building had been sold to a development company. The new owners planned to demolish the entire block and construct luxury apartments. Mara could purchase the restaurant space herself for $480,000. Otherwise, she had to leave. She read the number 3 times. $480,000. Her savings would not cover 10%. The bank had already rejected her previous loan application after the kitchen's ventilation system failed. She still owed suppliers. The roof leaked near the pantry, and the restaurant's insurance premium had doubled. Evelyn's table employed 11 people. 2 had worked there since Mara's mother was alive. The restaurant was more than a business. It was the last place where Mara could still hear her mother humming while she kneaded bread and her father laughing as he carried crates through the back door. Losing it would feel like burying them again. For the next 2 weeks, Mara met with banks, investors, and private lenders. Every meeting ended the same way. The restaurant was beloved but not profitable enough. The neighborhood was changing. Sentiment did not guarantee repayment. On the 15th day, a black car stopped outside Evelyn's table. The stranger from table 7 stepped out. This time, he was not wearing a blood-stained shirt. He wore a charcoal suit and was followed by a woman carrying a leather folder. Every employee in the dining room seemed to recognize him except Mara. Her head chef, Luis, leaned close to her. "That's Adrian Vale. Should that name mean something to me?" Luis stared at her. "Vale Hotels? Vale Properties? Half the luxury buildings downtown?" Mara looked through the window again. Adrian Vale entered the restaurant, like a man accustomed to every door opening before he touched it. He took the same seat at table 7. The woman placed the folder between them. "My attorney, Helen Ward," he said. "She is here to make certain you understand everything before you agree." Agree to what? A marriage. Mara laughed. Neither Adrian nor Helen did. The dining room suddenly felt too small. Mara sat across from him. You came here to propose? I came here to offer a legal arrangement. That is not better. My grandfather created a trust that transfers controlling interest in Vale Hospitality to me on my 39th birthday, provided I am married. Mara stared at him. Your grandfather put a marriage requirement in a billion-dollar trust. He believed unmarried men were reckless. Was he from the 19th century? Emotionally, yes. Helen opened the folder. Adrian continued. My 39th birthday is in 11 weeks. Without the shares, my uncle will gain permanent control of the company. I need a wife before then. You need $480,000. Mara's stomach dropped. How do you know what I need? I purchased the company that purchased this building. She stood so quickly that her chair struck the floor. You are the one closing my restaurant? No. My uncle authorized the redevelopment before I acquired the project. But you own it now. Yes. So stop it. I cannot cancel the contracts without board approval until I control the trust shares. Mara looked at the folder as though it were something poisonous. You created the problem and came here pretending to save me. I did not create it. But you can benefit from it. Adrian's face remained calm, but something shifted in his eyes. Yes, at least he had not lied. The agreement offered 1 year of marriage, separate bedrooms, and no expectation of physical intimacy. Mara would receive ownership of the restaurant property immediately, not after the marriage ended. All debts would be cleared, and her employees' positions would be protected during renovations. There was also an additional payment large enough to let her walk away from Evelyn's table forever. She crossed that section out. I don't want to be paid for marrying you. You would be giving up a year of your life. I'm not selling the year. I'm saving the restaurant. Adrian studied the line she had drawn through the payment. Most people would have asked for more. Then marry most people. A nearly invisible smile touched his mouth. I considered them. And? They wanted the money. So do I. No, you want the restaurant. Mara did not sign that day. She spent 3 nights reading the agreement. She took it to an independent attorney. She searched Adrian's name online and found photographs of him beside politicians, royalty, actresses, and his former fiancée, Celeste Harrow. Celeste was elegant, blonde, and born into a family whose name appeared on museum wings. Mara found no explanation for why Adrian had not married her. She also found articles about the death of Adrian's younger sister, Elise Vale, 6 years earlier. Elise had driven off a mountain road during a storm. Police ruled it an accident. In every photograph taken after Elise's death, Adrian looked like a man who had stopped expecting happiness. On the 29th day, Mara signed. They were married in a judge's private chambers on a gray Monday morning. Mara wore a cream dress she already owned. Adrian wore black. Helen served as witness, and Luis brought flowers from the restaurant. There were no vows beyond those required by law. When the judge told Adrian he could kiss the bride, he looked at Mara instead of moving toward her. We do not have to, he said softly. Mara was surprised by the small dignity of the question. She stepped closer and kissed his cheek. His skin was warm. His expression was not. But when they left the courthouse, Adrian placed one hand at the center of her back to guide her through a crowd of reporters. The touch was light and protective. It remained there until she was safely inside the car. Adrian lived in a stone mansion overlooking the river. It contained 14 bedrooms, an indoor pool, 2 dining rooms, and no evidence that anyone truly lived there. There were no family photographs in the halls, no books left open, and no coats hanging carelessly by the door. Mara was shown to a bedroom larger than her entire apartment. Adrian took the room across the hall. For the first week, they barely saw each other. Mara worked at the restaurant from morning until midnight. Adrian left before sunrise and returned after she was asleep. They communicated through brief messages. A board dinner Thursday. Formal photographers outside. Use the east entrance. The roof contractor arrives Tuesday. He never asked where she was. He never demanded affection. He never entered her room. Yet small things began to change. The leaking roof at Evelyn's table was repaired. The ancient refrigerator was replaced. Every employee received health insurance through a Vale company plan, although Adrian insisted it had been Helen's idea. One night, Mara returned to the mansion at 2 in the morning and found Adrian sitting alone in the dark kitchen. He wore black trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. A glass of untouched whiskey stood before him. You own several hotels with 24-hour restaurants, she said. Why are you sitting in the dark? I live here. That doesn't answer the question. He glanced toward the window. Why are you awake? I asked first. He looked exhausted, not physically tired, but hollowed out. Mara opened the refrigerator and found expensive ingredients arranged with perfect order. Nothing looked touched. Have you eaten? I had a dinner meeting. That also doesn't answer the question. He watched as she removed eggs, mushrooms, butter, and herbs. You don't have to cook for me. I'm cooking for myself. You took out 6 eggs. I'm extremely hungry. His mouth almost smiled. She made 2 omelets. Adrian finished every bite. Afterward, he carried both plates to the sink. My sister used to make eggs when she couldn't sleep, he said. It was the first personal thing he had told her. What kept her awake? The same thing that keeps everyone awake. What is that? The fear that the people we love are not who we believe them to be. Mara leaned against the counter. Were you close? She was the only person in my family who knew me before I learned to become useful. The sentence hurt in a way she did not fully understand. Adrian looked toward her. My uncle Malcolm is hosting a charity gala next week. You will be photographed. People will discuss you as if you are not standing in the room. They already do that at the restaurant when a meal is late. These people are crueler. Are you warning me? I am apologizing in advance. The gala was held inside the Vale Grand Hotel beneath chandeliers made of hand-cut crystal. Mara wore a dark green dress Adrian's stylist had delivered. She had almost refused it until she learned it was borrowed rather than purchased. The moment she entered the ballroom, conversations shifted. Women studied her dress. Men studied Adrian's hand at her waist. Mara recognized Celeste Harrow before anyone introduced them. Celeste was more beautiful in person. Her silver gown looked poured over her body, and her smile never reached her eyes. So this is the restaurant owner, she said. This is my wife, Adrian corrected. Of course. I heard the wedding was very sudden. It was. Celeste looked at Mara. Adrian has always been charitable toward endangered institutions. Mara understood the insult. She smiled. And you must be Celeste. I recognize you from the society pages. Celeste lifted her chin. I hope marriage has not been too overwhelming. Adrian's world can be complicated for people unused to it. So can a restaurant kitchen. Yet people eventually learn not to stand where they'll get burned. Adrian coughed into his glass to hide a laugh. Later, Celeste approached Mara while Adrian was speaking to board members. You should know he does not love you, she said. Mara's smile faded. I never claimed he did. He was supposed to marry me. What happened? His sister died. After that, Adrian stopped believing he deserved anything he wanted. For the first time, Celeste's cruelty slipped, revealing something almost like sadness. He will protect you, she continued. He will provide for you. He may even convince himself that is love. But when you ask him to give you the part of himself that still hurts, he will close every door. Mara glanced across the ballroom. Adrian was watching her. Even from a distance, he seemed to sense the change in her expression. Celeste followed her gaze. Do not mistake his attention for trust. Before Mara could respond, Malcolm Vale stepped onto the stage. Adrian's uncle was in his early 60s, silver-haired and warmly charming. He spoke about family, legacy, and the foundation's work. Then he called Adrian and Mara forward. Mara had not been warned. Malcolm smiled as they joined him. My nephew has surprised all of us, he told the crowd. But perhaps a man who has spent his life surrounded by luxury eventually begins to appreciate simpler things. Laughter moved through the ballroom. Mara felt Adrian's body go still beside her. Malcolm continued. Mrs. Vale's little restaurant has struggled recently. I'm sure we can all admire Adrian's willingness to rescue it. The word rescue landed like a slap. Mara saw the guests' expressions. They believed she had married for money. Worse, they were right. She tried to step away from the microphone. Adrian took it from Malcolm. My wife's restaurant survived a fire, 2 recessions, a pandemic, and a neighborhood that forgot loyalty could not be measured by property value. The laughter stopped. Evelyn's table feeds people my hotels would turn away. Mara employs workers other businesses considered too old, too inexperienced, or too inconvenient. She did not ask me to rescue her. She demanded a fair agreement and rejected more money than most people in this room would have taken. His eyes found Malcolm's. As for simplicity, there is nothing simple about building something people love. It is much easier to inherit a company and pretend that makes us impressive. The silence became thunderous applause. Mara stared at him. Adrian handed the microphone back to his uncle and guided her from the stage. In the private corridor outside the ballroom, she pulled her hand from his. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Because I'm your wife? Because he was wrong. She looked at him. The cold, controlled billionaire had disappeared for a moment. In his place stood a man whose anger came not from pride, but from seeing her humiliated. Mara's throat tightened. Thank you. Adrian's gaze dropped to her mouth before returning to her eyes. The air between them changed. It was not desire alone. It was recognition. He lifted one hand, stopped before touching her face, and let it fall. We should go back. Mara did not know whether she felt relieved or disappointed. Their marriage slowly filled with quiet rituals. Adrian began visiting Evelyn's table after closing. He always sat at table 7. Mara brought him whatever the kitchen had left, and he ate while she completed invoices. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they shared the comfortable silence of people who no longer needed to perform. She learned he hated pears, loved old jazz records, and remembered the names of every employee in his hotels. He learned she read mystery novels backward when she became impatient, sang badly while chopping onions, and still set one table for her mother every year on the anniversary of her death. One snowy night, the power failed while they were alone in the restaurant. Mara lit candles. Adrian found an old battery-powered radio beneath the counter. Soft music filled the dark dining room. Dance with me, she said. His expression tightened. I don't dance. You own ballrooms. I rent them to people who do. Mara held out her hand. This is my restaurant. My rules. He looked at her hand for several seconds before taking it. They moved between the empty tables. At first, Adrian held himself stiffly, maintaining a careful distance. Then Mara rested her cheek against his chest. His heartbeat was fast. You're nervous, she whispered. No. You negotiate billion-dollar deals without blinking, but dancing with your wife frightens you? Yes. The honesty made her smile. His arm tightened around her. For one fragile moment, they were not a struggling restaurant owner and a billionaire trapped inside a contract. They were simply two lonely people standing in candlelight. When the music ended, neither moved. Adrian lowered his head. Mara felt his breath against her lips. Then the power returned. The overhead lights flooded the room. Adrian stepped away as though caught committing a crime. 3 nights later, Mara discovered the locked room. She had returned to the mansion early after Luis insisted she take an evening off. A storm shook the windows. Somewhere upstairs, a door slammed. Mara followed the sound to the end of the east corridor. She had never seen Adrian use that part of the house. One door stood slightly open. Inside, the walls were covered with photographs. Mara entered. At first, she believed it was a business investigation. Then she saw the word murder written across a police report. There were 6 victims. A journalist found dead in his apartment, a former prosecutor killed in a hit-and-run, a hotel accountant who had drowned, a private investigator shot inside his car, a doctor whose death had been ruled suicide, and Adrian Vale. Red lines connected each victim to Adrian. Photographs showed his cars near crime scenes. Bank transfers had been authorized from accounts bearing his name. Security records placed him inside hotels where 2 victims had last been seen alive. In the center of the board was a photograph of Adrian. Beneath it, someone had written, "Speak new." Mara's pulse pounded in her ears. Then she saw her own face. It was a photograph taken outside Evelyn's table several months earlier. A line connected her to her father, Daniel Bennett. Another connected Daniel to the dead accountant. Beside Mara's photograph were 4 words. The daughter has the ledger. Mara backed away. A floorboard creaked behind her. Adrian stood in the doorway. He had removed his jacket. Rain darkened his shoulders. His expression changed when he saw where she was standing. Get away from the board. Mara turned toward him. Did you kill these people? No. Your name is connected to every one of them. I can explain. Why is my father here? Adrian closed the door. The click of the lock made her flinch. He saw it. Pain crossed his face. He immediately unlocked the door and stepped away from it. You can leave whenever you choose. Tell me the truth. He looked at Elise's photograph. My sister created the original board. Mara stared at him. She believed you were a murderer? She believed I was helping one. The room felt colder. Adrian approached the board but stopped several feet from Mara. 6 years ago, Elise discovered that money was being moved through Vale hotels into private accounts. The transfers appeared to be mine. When she investigated, people began dying. Your uncle? I suspected Malcolm. Elise believed the conspiracy went higher and wider. Judges, police officers, executives. A group that protected one another through bribery, blackmail, and murder. And my father? Daniel Bennett worked as a forensic accountant before he opened the restaurant with your mother. Mara shook her head. My father was a cook. He became one after he tried to expose them. No. He copied financial records connecting Malcolm to the organization. Before he could deliver them to federal investigators, Evelyn's table caught fire. Mara remembered smoke, her mother screaming, and her father running back inside because he believed an employee was trapped. He never came out. The fire was ruled an accident, she whispered. It was not. Mara looked again at her father's photograph. You knew all this when you came into my restaurant, yes. You knew who I was, yes. The truth struck harder than any lie. The marriage. Adrian's silence answered before he spoke. I needed to protect you. You needed the ledger. I believed your father hid it before the fire. So you married me to search my restaurant? At first, I intended to gain your trust and find the evidence before Malcolm realized who you were. Mara felt something inside her break with terrifying quietness. Every dinner, every repair, every time you sat at table 7? Not every time, but the first time, yes. The proposal. Yes, the contract. Yes. She pushed past him. Adrian caught her wrist, then released it immediately. Mara, do not touch me. His hand dropped. She had never seen him look frightened before. I did not expect. What? That I would discover my husband investigated me before learning my favorite song? I did not expect to love you. The words stopped her. The storm struck the windows. Mara slowly turned. Adrian stood beneath the photographs of the dead, his face stripped of every defense. That does not make it better, she said. I know. You should have told me. I was afraid you would leave. You were right. Mara removed her wedding ring and placed it on the table. Adrian stared at it as though it were the last light in the room. She returned to Evelyn's table and slept on the office sofa. For 5 days, Adrian did not contact her. He sent no messages. He did not appear at table 7. He honored her demand for distance so completely that it hurt more than if he had fought. On the 6th night, Celeste entered the restaurant. Mara almost asked her to leave. Then Celeste placed a file on the counter. Adrian did not kill those people. You know about the board? I helped Elise build it. Mara's anger sharpened. You told me not to trust him. I told you he closes every door. I did not say he was guilty. Celeste opened the file. Inside were photographs of Elise, Adrian, and Malcolm at a Vale estate. Elise called me the night before she died. She had proof Malcolm was using Adrian's digital authorization codes. Adrian discovered what was happening and confronted one of Malcolm's men. What happened? The man attacked Elise. She struck him with a fireplace tool and killed him in self-defense. Mara looked at Celeste. Adrian covered it up. He moved the body and bribed an official to make the death appear accidental. He believed he was protecting his sister. Instead, he gave Malcolm something to use against both of them. Why didn't Elise go to the police? She planned to. She died the next morning. The mountain road, the storm, and the supposed accident returned to Mara all at once. Adrian has spent 6 years trying to prove Malcolm killed her, Celeste said. He also knows that exposing Malcolm means exposing himself. Obstruction, evidence tampering, bribery, and possibly prison. Mara closed the file. He still used me. Yes. Celeste's honesty was brutal. He used you because Malcolm had begun watching the restaurant. Adrian believed marriage would place you under his security without alerting you to the danger. He could have told me. He should have. Why are you defending him? Celeste looked toward table 7. Because I once loved him, and because he chose fear over honesty with me too. I do not want him to lose another person for the same reason. The restaurant's back window shattered. Mara turned. A bottle rolled across the kitchen floor. Fire climbed the curtains. Celeste screamed. Within seconds, smoke filled the rear hallway. Mara ran toward the kitchen. My father's ledger. Forget the ledger. It has to be here. The fire alarms began to shriek. Employees and customers rushed toward the front exit. Mara grabbed an extinguisher, but flames were already spreading along the grease-darkened wall. Then Adrian appeared through the smoke. He had no coat. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. He seized Mara by the shoulders. Get outside. The ledger is here. I do not care. You spent 6 years looking for it. I would burn every piece of evidence in this city before I let it take you. Something crashed in the kitchen. Adrian pulled her toward the exit. Mara looked back at the old framed photograph of herself and her mother. Flames crawled toward it. Then she remembered. The photograph had hung in 3 different locations over the years, but her mother had never allowed Mara to replace its thick wooden frame. Your father made it, Evelyn had always said. Mara broke from Adrian's grip. She ran to the wall, tore down the photograph, and smashed the frame against the floor. A narrow compartment opened along the back. Inside was a small metal key. Adrian stared. Mara understood immediately. Her father had not hidden a ledger in the restaurant. He had hidden the key to one. Adrian carried her outside moments before part of the kitchen ceiling collapsed. Firefighters arrived. Rain mixed with ash. Mara stood across the street wrapped in Adrian's jacket as flames consumed the place her parents had built. Employees cried around her. Adrian's arm remained around her shoulders, but he did not ask her to forgive him. He simply stayed. At dawn, after the fire was controlled, Mara handed him the key. No more secrets. No more. Even if the truth destroys you, he closed his fingers around it. Especially then. The key opened a safe deposit box, registered under Mara's mother's maiden name. Inside were financial ledgers, recorded conversations, photographs, and a letter from Daniel Bennett. My dearest Mara, if you are reading this, I failed to come home. I need you to know that your mother begged me to walk away, and part of me wishes I had listened. Courage sounds noble when spoken about by people who do not have to pay its price. But silence has a price too. I looked at you sleeping above the restaurant and understood that one day you would ask what kind of man your father had been. I wanted the answer to be an honest one. Do not spend your life avenging me. Build something beautiful. Feed people. Love someone brave enough to tell you the truth before it is too late. Mara could not finish reading aloud. Adrian sat beside her in the bank's private room. Tears moved silently down her face. He did not touch her until she reached for his hand. The evidence was enough to destroy Malcolm Vale. But exposing Malcolm also meant revealing Adrian's crimes. Adrian arranged a special meeting of the Vale Hospitality Board at the Grand Hotel. Malcolm entered smiling, unaware that federal agents were waiting in an adjoining room. Mara stood beside Adrian. So did Celeste, Helen, and the retired investigator who had once worked with Elise. Adrian presented the records one by one. Illegal transfers, payments to police officers, orders connected to the 6 deaths, a recording of Malcolm threatening Daniel Bennett, and proof that Elise's car had been sabotaged. Malcolm's warmth vanished. You foolish boy, he said. Do you understand what you have done? Yes, you have destroyed this family. No, I have stopped protecting the man who destroyed it. Malcolm looked at Mara. You think he is different from me? Ask him what he buried for his sister. I know, Mara said. For the first time, Malcolm appeared uncertain. Adrian faced the board. 6 years ago, I concealed a death and bribed a public official. I believed I was protecting Elise. I was actually protecting the system that later killed her. He placed a signed confession beside the evidence. I will accept every legal consequence. Mara looked at him. He had known exactly what would happen after the meeting. This was his goodbye. Malcolm reached inside his jacket. Adrian moved before anyone else. He pushed Mara behind him. A gunshot cracked through the boardroom. Adrian staggered. Security officers tackled Malcolm. For one terrible second, Mara could not understand why Adrian was falling. Then she saw blood spreading across his shirt. She dropped beside him. No, stay with me. Adrian looked strangely peaceful. I should have told you. You can apologize later. I loved you before I knew how to say it honestly. Then say it honestly now. His breathing became shallow. I love you, Mara Bennett. She pressed both hands against the wound. You do not get to use my maiden name after making me fall in love with you. A weak smile touched his mouth. You left the ring. I was angry. You were right. I am still your wife. His eyes closed. Mara screamed his name until the paramedics pulled her away. Adrian survived. The bullet missed his heart by less than an inch. Malcolm was arrested before sunset. Over the following months, investigators charged executives, police officers, and officials connected to the organization. The victims' families finally learned the truth. Elise's death was officially ruled a homicide. Daniel Bennett was publicly recognized as a whistleblower whose evidence had exposed decades of corruption. But truth did not arrive without collecting its debt. Adrian pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, bribery, and making false statements during Elise's original investigation. His lawyers believed they could avoid prison. Adrian refused to let them argue that wealth, grief, or family pressure excused what he had done. At sentencing, Mara sat behind him wearing their wedding ring. Adrian received 30 months in federal prison. The newspapers called it the fall of a billionaire. Mara understood it differently. It was the first time Adrian had stopped falling. Evelyn's table could not be restored. The fire had destroyed too much. Insurance covered only part of the damage. Vale Hospitality offered Mara a restaurant space inside one of its hotels, but she refused. She did not want another rescue. Instead, she used the property Adrian had transferred to her and rebuilt with the help of her employees, neighbors, and hundreds of former customers. She named the new restaurant The Last Table. Above the entrance, she hung her mother's original sign, "No one leaves hungry." Every Sunday, Mara drove 3 hours to visit Adrian. They sat across from each other beneath fluorescent lights, separated by rules, guards, and everything they could no longer pretend had not happened. Their love did not become easier because it was real. Some visits ended in tears, some ended in anger. During one, Mara accused him of still deciding what pain she could handle. During another, Adrian admitted he sometimes wished he had kept the secret longer just to have more nights with her at table 7. "Do you regret marrying me?" he asked. Mara thought about the board, the fire, the lies, and the dance beneath candlelight. "I regret the reason you asked." His face tightened, but not the answer I gave. For the first time since his sentencing, Adrian cried, not dramatically, not loudly. He lowered his head, covered his eyes, and allowed someone else to witness what grief had made of him. Mara placed her palm against the glass. Adrian placed his hand over hers on the other side. They could not touch, but neither of them moved away. 30 months passed slowly, and then all at once. On the morning Adrian was released, reporters waited outside the prison. Mara did not. She sent Helen to collect him. Adrian believed she had changed her mind. During his sentence, Mara's letters had grown less frequent. The final one had arrived 3 weeks earlier. It contained only an address and 4 words. 7 o'clock. Do not be late. Helen drove him to the last table. Through the front windows, Adrian saw a full dining room, warm lights, and families gathered around wooden tables. He entered quietly. No one recognized him at first. He was thinner than before. His hair was shorter. The expensive suits were gone. At the back of the room, table 7 stood empty. A bowl of roasted tomato soup waited beside a grilled cheese sandwich. Mara emerged from the kitchen. For a moment, neither spoke. She wore a simple blue dress and her wedding ring. Adrian looked at the ring, then at her face. "I thought you weren't coming. I thought you had learned not to assume things for me." "I am still learning." She approached him. The restaurant had grown silent. Luis stood near the kitchen door, wiping his eyes with a towel. Celeste sat near the window with Helen, both pretending not to watch. Adrian looked around the room. "You built something beautiful. We built something honest." His eyes returned to the soup. "Am I allowed to eat?" "That depends." "On what?" "Do you believe marriage can be treated like a business expense?" Adrian smiled. This time, it was not uncertain. "No." "What do you believe it is?" He looked at the woman he had first approached because he needed evidence, the wife he had nearly lost because he feared the truth, and the person who had taught him that love was not protection without honesty. "A promise you keep after it stops benefiting you." Mara's eyes filled. Adrian reached into his coat and removed the wedding ring she had left in the locked room 2 years earlier. He had kept it through the investigation, the trial, and prison. "I do not have the fortune I had when we met," he said. "I resigned from the company. Most of my remaining shares will fund compensation for the victims' families. I have no mansion, no private car, and no idea what I am supposed to do next." "You could wash dishes." "I was hoping for something with a chair. Dishwasher's stand. I have been standing all day." "You were released 4 hours ago. It has been a difficult 4 hours." Mara laughed through her tears. Adrian's expression became serious. "I cannot promise you a life without regret. I don't need one. I cannot undo why I married you. I know, but I can ask again for the right reason." He lowered himself to one knee beside table 7. The room disappeared around them. "Mara Bennett Vale, I loved you badly before I learned how to love you honestly. I do not deserve the years you waited, but I will spend every year I have being grateful for them. Will you remain my wife when there is no contract left to save either of us?" Mara looked down at him. The rich stranger she had married was gone. The mansion, the company, and the protection of his name had disappeared. What remained was a man with scars beneath his shirt, guilt he would carry forever, and a heart finally brave enough to arrive without armor. She placed her hand against his face. "I never stopped being your wife." Adrian rose. When he kissed her, the customers applauded. But Mara barely heard them. She heard her mother humming in the kitchen. She heard her father's letter. "Build something beautiful. Love someone brave enough to tell you the truth before it is too late." They had almost been too late. Perhaps that was the bitter part of love. It could not restore the dead, erase betrayal, or return the years taken by fear. But it could still take two damaged lives and make a home between them. Adrian sat at table 7. Mara placed the soup before him. He lifted the spoon, tasted it, and closed his eyes. Still the best thing I have ever eaten. You never said that the first night. I thought it. You should have told me. Adrian opened his eyes. I intend to spend the rest of my life telling you things before you have to ask. Mara sat across from him. Outside, rain began tapping against the windows, just as it had on the night they met. Inside, every table was full. No one was hungry, and for the first time in many years, neither of them was alone.